Abduction by Peg Carrot. Chapter 1. Denny Thurman stuck the black wig on his head, pulling it snug above his ears. He put on the brown shirt with the fake UPS logo, buttoned it over his t-shirt, and tucked it into his brown pants. Last, he pressed a false mustache on his upper lip, pushing it hard to make it stick. He smiled at himself in the mirror. His own mother wouldn't recognize him. The temporary rose tattoo on his left bicep showed below his sleeve, but the slight bulge of the handgun in his shoulder holster was barely noticeable under his shirt. Denny hurried downstairs to his car, feeling nearly as excited as he did when he placed a bet. An hour later, he stopped the car in the alley behind his ex-wife's house and put on thin plastic gloves. He got out but left the engine running in case he needed to drive away quickly. He looked both ways, saw no one, and walked to the gate that connected the garage to the fence. He reached over the top of the gate, feeling for a latch. Good, no lock. He opened the gate and stepped into the yard. One hand rested in his pants pocket, the fingers wrapped around a small plastic bag containing a piece of broiled steak. With luck, the dog would come to him without the bribe. If that happened, Denny would have a steak sandwich for dinner tonight. He wished he could remember the dog's name, but Denny had never paid attention to the dog. He didn't care for animals, and 6 years was a long time. By now it might be a different dog. Denny's eyes swept across the small yard. Neatly mowed, a swing set, sunbursts of yellow tulips in full bloom, a bird feeder, and a bird bath. No dog, though. Surely Anita would have a dog. She had been crazy about dogs, and so had Bonnie. They both petted every mutt they met, acting as if each was the grand champion of all time. Anita even kept dog biscuits and a leash in the car, in case she saw a stray in need of help. The dog must be inside. Denny would have to pry open a door or a window. He hoped the house wasn't wired with an alarm system. Denny walked towards the house, but stopped before he reached the screen door. His eyes swung to the corner of the house, to a metal flap at ground level. A dog door! If he could coax the dog out the door, he wouldn't have to break in, after all, and wouldn't risk setting off an alarm. Denny stood outside the dog door and whistled. "Here, dog," he called. "Come get your steak," he whistled again. When no dog appeared, Denny pulled off a piece of the steak, pushed the door flap inward, and tossed the meat inside. Soon the flap pushed outward, and an elderly black and white terrier waddled out. The once dark muzzle was gray, and the dog walked stiff-legged, as if his knees didn't bend well anymore. It's the same dog, Denny thought. He must be over 100 in dog years by now. Denny wondered if the dog would remember him. "Hey, dog," Denny said. The dog blinked, looking around as if unsure where the sound had come from. He's almost blind, Denny realized. Denny held the steak toward the old terrier. The dog sniffed, wagged his tail, and came closer. When he tried to take the meat in his teeth, Denny pulled it away. He put the steak back in the bag and shoved it into his pocket. He had the dog. Why waste the steak? He removed the leash from his other pocket, looped it around the dog's neck, and tugging gently led him out the gate. The dog followed willingly, but couldn't jump into the car. Denny had to lift him into the back seat. Before he shut the door, he unbuckled the dog's collar and read the ID tag. Pookie, it said. Then a phone number. That's right, Pookie. Denny remembered now. Foolish name for a dog. The ID tag clinked against a rabies tag and a King County dog license as Denny tossed the collar into the weeds beside the alley. He opened the driver's door and slid behind the wheel. He glanced at himself in the rearview mirror to be sure the wig and mustache were still in place. Satisfied with his appearance, he drove slowly out of the alley and headed for the school, removing the gloves as he drove. The dog whined and pawed at the back of Denny's seat. "Too late to cry," Denny said. "You're the bait now, Pookie, my boy. You're the insurance to make sure Matt gets into the car without calling for help." Chapter 2. Bonnie hadn't thought about the dream in years, which was fine with her. She remembered it when her best friend Nancy said, "Last night I dreamed I jumped out of the window during math, landed in the ocean, and rode off on a sea turtle." I can never recall my dreams, Bonnie said as she pulled on her Mountain Middle School shorts and t-shirt for PE class. Except for one. I used to have it a lot. You had the same dream more than once? Mine are different every night. This one was a nightmare. The first time I had it was the night my dad died. What was it about? Bonnie leaned down to tie her shoes, surprised by the chill she felt. It's hard to explain. Try me. In the dream, I'm lost on a huge prairie, acres and acres of grass, higher than my head. I spend the whole dream running, calling out for help that never comes. Just grass? No vicious lion chases you? You don't fall into a pit full of poisonous snakes? I know it doesn't sound scary, but whenever I had the dream, I always woke up crying with my heart pounding. Each time she had felt as if a heavy black fog hung over her bed, seeping through the blankets into her skin and making it impossible ever to feel happy again. Bonnie shuddered, remembering. You were 4 when your dad died, right? Nancy said. Right. The thing is, I didn't know about death until it happened. I heard the word, but I didn't think it had anything to do with me. I never expected it to happen to my family, to my daddy. Most 4-year-olds wouldn't. My grandma tried to help me understand, but she made me more scared than before. What did she say? Nancy asked. She told me everyone dies, but usually not until they're very old. She meant to comfort me, but I thought Daddy was old. When you're 4, 26 seems ancient. Small wonder you had nightmares. The girls left the locker room and began jogging around the gym with their classmates. Grandma talked about heaven and angels and how it was a tragic accident, Bonnie said, but I focused on everyone dies. Everyone included my mother, who was the same age as Daddy. That night, I dreamed I was lost on the prairie. You were afraid you'd be an orphan? Bonnie spoke softly. I never told anyone about the dream before. Mom used to come into my room when I'd wake up crying, and she'd ask she'd asked what I had dreamed, but I always pretended I couldn't remember. At first, I was superstitious about it, afraid if I told, the dream would come true. Later, I worried there was something wrong with me for having the same bad dream over and over. I didn't tell Mom because I didn't want to go to the doctor. I was scared I'd get a shot. You don't need a master's degree in psychology to figure out that nightmare, Nancy said. It's the classic fear of lost dream. You lost your dad, and you were afraid your mom would die too. Perfectly normal. They'd march you straight to a kitty shrink if you didn't have dreams like that when a parent died. Do you still have it? No, I had it a lot at first. Then it gradually came less often. It stopped when I was 8 or 9. So you are now a well-adjusted 13-year-old who has overcome a terrible loss and gotten on with her life. No more nightmares. You, on the other hand, Bonnie said, are a serious mental case who secretly yearns to escape from school and ride away on a sea turtle. You got that right, Nancy said. Although Bonnie smiled, the familiar cold ache settled in her stomach. It didn't happen often anymore. To be honest, whole weeks went past when she'd never thought about her dad at all. But when she did think of him, she felt as if she had a hole in her heart, like some vital piece of herself was missing. Remembering how suddenly she had lost him always made her feel vulnerable. If tragedy could knock on the door without warning once, it could arrive again. She wished she hadn't told Nancy about the dream. Now she felt anxious and edgy, as if some unexpected disaster were about to strike her family.